In 1998, 19-year-old Marcus Reed sat in a small interrogation room in Tulsa, Oklahoma, for 14 straight hours. No lawyer, no food, no sleep. By hour 12, exhausted, confused, and terrified, he said the words that would cost him 17 years of his life. Okay, I did it. I killed her. He hadn't. Marcus Reed would spend the next 17 years in prison for a murder he did not commit, convicted almost entirely on the strength of his own confession, a confession that was, in every meaningful way, false. This is how it happened, and how the real killer walked free for nearly 2 decades. On the night of June 9th, 1998, 22-year-old Diane Castillo was found dead in her apartment in East Tulsa. She had been a kindergarten teacher, well-liked, with no known enemies. The crime shocked the quiet residential neighborhood where she lived. Police needed a suspect quickly. The public was frightened. The pressure was immense. Marcus Reed had been Diane's neighbor. He had spoken to her in passing a handful of times. He had no criminal record, no history of violence, and an alibi. He had been at his cousin's house that entire evening, a fact later confirmed by 3 separate witnesses. But Marcus was young, black, and lived 2 doors down. That was enough for detectives to bring him in for questioning. What followed was a textbook case of what experts now call a coercive interrogation. Detectives told Marcus they had his fingerprints at the scene. They didn't. They told him a witness had identified him. There was no such witness. They told him that if he confessed and showed remorse, the court would go easier on him. None of this was true. After 14 hours without sleep, food, or legal counsel, Marcus broke down. He said what they wanted to hear. He later testified that he believed, in his exhausted, panicked state, that confessing was the only way the interrogation would stop. It worked. The interrogation stopped. His life as he knew it ended that same night. At trial in 1999, the prosecution's case rested almost entirely on Marcus's confession. There was no physical evidence linking him to the crime. No DNA, no fingerprints, no witnesses who placed him at the scene. His defense attorney, a public defender handling more than 80 active cases at the time, failed to call any of the 3 alibi witnesses who could have confirmed Marcus was nowhere near the apartment that night. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Marcus Reed was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. For the next 15 years, Marcus filed appeal after appeal from inside the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. Each one was denied. Most legal experts who later reviewed the case noted the same chilling pattern. Once a confession exists, juries almost never question it, regardless of how it was obtained. Then, in 2013, a nonprofit organization specializing in wrongful conviction cases took on Marcus's appeal. They requested DNA, testing on evidence that had never been properly analyzed at the original trial. Skin cells recovered from underneath Diane Castillo's fingernails, evidence she had likely scratched her attacker during a struggle. The results came back in February 2015. The DNA did not match Marcus Reed. It matched a man named Gerald Holt, Diane's ex-boyfriend, who had never been seriously investigated, despite a documented history of violence against her that police had on file the entire time. Gerald Holt had moved to a different state shortly after Diane's murder. He had built a new life, a new identity, completely unaware that DNA technology would eventually catch up to him 17 years later. When confronted with the DNA evidence, Holt eventually confessed. The real confession, the one that actually matched the physical evidence at the scene. Marcus Reed was exonerated and released from prison in April 2015. He walked out as a 36-year-old man, having entered as a teenager. He had missed his mother's funeral. He had missed the chance to ever have his own children. He had missed 17 birthdays, 17 holidays, 17 years that no court, no apology, and no settlement could ever return to him. Gerald Holt was finally convicted of Diane Castillo's murder in 2016, 18 years after he committed it. Marcus later filed a civil lawsuit against the city of Tulsa for wrongful conviction. The case eventually settled for an amount that, while substantial, could never compensate for what had truly been lost. In an interview after his release, Marcus said something that has stayed with researchers studying false confessions ever since. They kept telling me if I just said it, I could go home and sleep. I just wanted to sleep. I didn't understand that saying it meant I'd never really go home again. Marcus Reed's case is far from unique. According to the National Registry of Exonerations, false confessions have played a role in nearly 30% of wrongful convictions overturned by DNA evidence in the United States. Many of these cases share the same pattern: young, vulnerable suspects, prolonged interrogations without legal counsel, and confessions extracted through exhaustion and psychological pressure, rather than genuine guilt. Marcus now works with the very organization that helped free him, advocating for interrogation reform and mandatory recording of all police questioning. He has said that no amount of money will ever return the 17 years he lost. But if his story prevents even one more false confession, it will have meant something. This has been the Dark Truth Files. If this case disturbed you, share it. The system doesn't always get it right. Sometimes the truth takes 17 years to surface. Stay informed, question what you're told, and never underestimate the power of the truth.